Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen. I'm the host and sauna majori of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's episode was recorded live on site at our Cybersecurity Sauna booth at the Sphere 22 security event in Helsinki. We had an opportunity to talk to some of the guests and speakers at the event. I'm joined by Carole Cadwalladr, who had a key role in exposing the Cambridge Analytica and Facebook shenanigans and influence in elections such as Brexit 2016. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jan. Thanks so much for having me.
Welcome to the Cyber Sauna. I heard you. This is not your first time in a sauna.
No. You know what? I actually wrote an article. I came to Helsinki once and did a travel story about saunas.
Oh, that's amazing.
This was back in the days before I went full time into investigating sort of modern day dystopia.
There we go. Speaking of which, your topic here is threats to democracy, and that's certainly an important topic. But I have an instinct that different people have very different ideas about what the threats to democracy is. Would that be correct?
I mean, I think we're living in an age in which there are multiple threats to democracy coming at us from all directions. And I guess that my particular interest has been around social media and the way that sort of weaponized by populists and authoritarians who are just the best at using it. And because it encourages bad behavior in the sense that as we know, the posts which go most viral on social media are the ones which are most inflammatory. They contain hate or violence or they're fake.
Yeah. So what was the biggest surprise you had when you sort of started down that rabbit hole?
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, I just, I sort of hark back to November 2016 was when I started looking at this. And it was I became very interested just a couple of weeks before the US election. Right. There was a series of, it felt to me like weird things that were happening on the internet. And then a week after the election, my editor sort of said, we just started hearing about fake news. And so he said, write a piece about fake news. And it was just like falling. I really did fall down, the Alice in Wonderland, you fall down the rabbit hole.
Exactly.
And it felt like everything I had sort of thought and knew about the world had got reversed.
Yeah.
And I discovered that these sort of Google searches, a Google search on Jews, and which I made into a question, do Jews? Google offered me, are Jews is what the question was, and Google offered me the option.
Auto-completed it.
It auto-completed it to, are Jews evil? Oh, no. And then it produced a page of results saying, yes, Jews are evil. And then suggesting I look for, did the Holocaust happen? So I clicked on that. Yeah. And I got a Stormfront, a Nazi website, as the first result on it. So it was this very uncanny feeling of that something had sort of destabilized.
Yeah.
And, and I think we now know that to be true.
Yeah. Just a couple of clicks away from your normal day and you're in very dark places.
Exactly. But it was the way that I was being led into those rabbit holes by Google.
Yeah.
And, we know that to this day, YouTube's algorithm does exactly the same thing. It sort of leads people into extremist content.
Yeah. Do you think that's more about sort of just general like machine learning and algorithmic things like, they go to their strong suits, or are those algorithms specifically geared to sort of lead you towards more, I don't know?
It's such a complex issue, and I still think we don't know. And I still think, particularly in what happened in 2016, we don't know. Yeah. But, you're right. It absolutely is the machine learning some, really dark shit, essentially. Yeah. But how did that happen? And, it was partly the incentives that I think the platforms created. But I think, bad actors also realized that they could subvert these systems, and they subverted it invisibly, and they got away with it.
Yeah, I think that was my question. Sort of, is it because of like human behavior, like people who watch this also like this, or is it because you like things that are you're looking at content that is a little bit Nazi, maybe you like things that are a lot more Nazi?
Yeah, exactly. I think so to go back to it, YouTube's algorithm, does that very famously. If you look for vegetarian content, you're kind of you're funneled into vegan content within 2 clicks. Yeah. So there is that, but I think specifically in the same way that we know companies try and manipulate SEO results, you kind of had Nazis manipulating.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, why not? And that's, And I think, as I sort of say, I feel that we haven't got to the bottom at all of what happened in 2016. But but essentially, there was I think a deep subversion of many of our social media sites.
So if you look back to 2016, when you sort of first stumbled into this whole the Cambridge Analytica, the Facebook politics, the whole thing, where do you think we're now? Are we any better off or worse off?
I mean, we are better off in the sense that in 2016, we did not have a clue. This was totally unknown. And, as I sort of said, I first became interested in September 2016 when there were 3 different articles I read, but one of the first ones was this story, I think it was BuzzFeed, about these teenagers in Macedonia, I don't know if you remember this, who were writing fake news about Hillary Clinton and becoming sort of millionaires off the back of it because they were exploiting Facebook's, ad tech system and monetizing lies against Hillary Clinton. And that was all completely invisible. It was only people, I think it was a journalist in Macedonia who stumbled across the story. But at that time, I mean, one of the things which has come out of the Cambridge Analytica story was a couple of months later, they did actually bring in the ad library, and which is really problematic. It's not great for many reasons. It doesn't show who spent what and what, who was targeted. But at least now there's an archive of some of this stuff. Before there was nothing, and we still don't have it. I mean, one of the most frustrating things to me is that, this election, I spent a lot of time looking at the illegal behaviour in Brexit, but actually, and we know that campaign was carried out online, but we still have no idea. That was just lost to public record. It's lost to history. Academics can't look at it. Journalists can't look at it. And that is profoundly, profoundly undemocratic.
Absolutely. And in the security industry, we often focus on the harm and the negatives and that. And we've been talking about that, certainly. But do you think that this new technology, are there opportunities for positive developments as far as democracy is concerned? Like, can we have better democracy because of technology?
I mean, the argument is made a lot that it kind of it opens it up theoretically. I mean, that's what they say. It's one of the arguments that Facebook use in America, for example, which is that social media favors, it helps. It's a sort of level playing field more in terms of, what's the opposite of not the incumbent? The kind of like the newcomer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is that can actually get their message out in ways without that much money, in ways which weren't possible before. So there is that, and all politicians depend upon it. But at the same time, there is a real question, I think, about whether democracy is going to survive social media.
Yeah. What about I'm a fan of science fiction, and there was a science fiction book, I think, where there was this idea of this mobile app where people would get mini referendums almost throughout the day. Like a member of parliament could push out what do you people think about this? And then they could weigh in, give their voices. So, something like that, would that be beneficial for democracy or
there was a political party in Italy, 5 Star, which were really doing that. They were kind of, they were really about sort of, that thing of doing these mini referendums of the people and letting people speak. But the problem is that somebody's behind the platform. Somebody's got the controls. Yeah. And we don't know how that can be manipulated. And, certainly with 5 Star, there's been quite a lot of reporting about Russian money going into the political party and, I think other allegations. And so I think it's always about power. It's always about power. Are there ways of doing that in a genuinely distributed way that is, conducive to people speaking and participating? And, hopefully I like your optimism that maybe we will find those. But I think we're in a tricky situation at the moment as to, with us becoming, authoritarian dictatorships before that moment happens.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I just, it is a tricky question, and social media has been bad for so many things that I just want to have that hope in my heart that it's going to be good for something. And why not democracy, the great equalizer?
Yeah, we just know there are so many ways to manipulate the online space. And Absolutely. We know that the big tech companies don't put the amount of money and resource into it that they should. And safety and security is not their first priority. And so I think whilst we have these companies which are owned by these vast monopolies, they've got nobody to compete against, there's no real regulation, then I think we are all very vulnerable.
I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've never done an interview in a sauna before, so it's very exciting.
First time for everything.
Glad we got our clothes on, that's all I'll say. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much. That was our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.